I'm Dr. John Whyte, and you're watching Changemakers, the Future of Health. The Renaissance was a historical time of rebirth in science, art, music, and technology. It witnessed amazing advances in all of these areas. I've been wondering lately, are we perhaps in a new renaissance in health and healthcare? Particularly as it relates to diagnostics and therapeutics for cancer, heart disease, obesity, and infectious disease. My guest today believes that we indeed are. Elcin Barker Ergun is the president and CEO of Menarini Group. I met with her at their headquarters in Florence, Italy, widely regarded to be the birthplace of the Renaissance. She shares her excitement about the role of precision medicine, particularly targeted therapies in impacting chronic disease. She reminds us the role of early diagnosis as a key step in the healthcare journey. I found her thoughts about the role of AI both realistic and pragmatic. She explains her leadership style and how the decision-making process is often different in Europe than other areas of the world. And like me, she believes we are in a new renaissance when it comes to the future of health. Elcin, welcome to Changemakers.
Well, thank you so much. Great to be here, and it's a real pleasure.
Here we are in Florence, birthplace of the Renaissance. Are we in a renaissance of clinical trials and research?
Absolutely. I think we're really in an era of incredible change and progress. I think so many things have been there, but now they're all coming together as we go into precision medicine in a very, very determined way, and also academia and the whole ecosystem, but also both on the diagnostic side and on the therapeutic side. So it's really the Renaissance. Yeah, I agree.
I want to talk a little bit about your specific work and priorities. And we were talking beforehand that here we are in Italy. It's really the home of big cardiovascular trials, lipid-lowering agents, novel anticoagulants. But you also have made a strong focus on oncology. Why is that?
In reality, we have not changed our focus on cardiovascular treatments. If we look at the world and mortality rates, cardiovascular diseases are still the number one leading cause of death, John. We are the sixth biggest cardiovascular company in the world, and we have every drug possible in that area. And we will continue for the reason that this is still, there's a huge unmet need in that area, and we all have to put a lot of efforts to bring more products and also make sure what we have available is used in the right way, in hypertension control and everything. So now let's move into oncology. So I joined Menarini as Group CEO in 2019, September. Then our owners always had the vision to enter into oncology. So my coming was very much related to that. And the biggest priority was to accelerate oncology and to also turn our company's direction to become more and more an innovative pharma company.
The big talk in cancer trials is really around precision medicine. When you think about precision medicine here at Menarini, what does that mean?
This is an area that I love talking about because it takes me back to that Renaissance question you asked about our industry at the moment. So when you look at all the difficult to treat mutations or alterations, if you look at lung, we have immuno-oncology, but we have now drugs for ALK, ROS, other things. When you look at AML, today we have FLT3 inhibitors, IDH inhibitors. And when you look at breast, now we have like our drug in the ESR1 mutation, but also in many different areas, we have pathways now where we're able to create drugs. So wherever you look, we are in that renaissance of targeting very difficult to treat mutations, and we're truly now going for personalized treatment. In Menarini, we have our diagnostics division, and one thing that our team is working on is to be able to bring, for multiple myeloma, a hematologic area, instead of bone marrow biopsy, a blood test that can enable MRD negative monitoring with circulating tumor cells. Because most of the applications today are ctDNA, but these circulating tumor cells that are rare cells in the blood can also inform us about the tumors in a complementary way.
And that's really exciting to be able to find these markers in the blood rather than, as you mentioned, a bone marrow biopsy or lots of imaging studies, right?
Because it's so invasive, you cannot repeat it. And that is what blood-based tests are giving. But for instance, United States is a better environment today in terms of bringing, for instance, a blood-based test, because typical testing is via tissue. But in many tumors, take lung or breast, there is a lot of heterogeneity. So you don't always find, right, a homogeneous way to characterize in reality what is going on. So therefore, blood-based tests should be the future, should really be part of that.
So that's the future of cancer care?
The diagnostic.
I think it's very important because now, for instance, in Europe is very fragmented, and liquid biopsy or blood-based tests infrastructure is very scattered in Europe. In emerging markets, in China and other places, there's also tremendous work to be done before you bring your therapeutic in order to help create that testing infrastructure. So I think to really fuel this renaissance of innovation, I think we need to work with authorities together to accelerate also the diagnostic side of this equation.
And you talk a lot about innovation. I wanted to ask you, what's your perception of artificial intelligence? Is it still too early? I spoke with Dr. Caleb at FDA, and he talked about that he expects AI to be used in the drug review process in just a few years. Where do you see all of this developing just in the next year or two?
So I'm a computer engineer myself, right? Not a typical background for a CEO of a biopharma company. So if you ask me, my honest opinion is that we don't have the renaissance yet on AI translated into innovation. You know, AI has really transformed in many different areas. How it can inform us in more on the discovery or research side, where processing data is very important for us. When you cracked really, a real renaissance using AI, that is the part that I would have liked to see, and I still would like to see us using it there to guide us. But in terms of reviews and things like that, like in any other area, we are increasingly using them, and that gives a lot of efficiency on those areas. But again,
but not necessarily in protocol
but it's not a
design.
breakthrough innovation. It's more about acceleration of clinical trials. You can also have a lot of AI on forecasting or clinical trial efficiency, recruitment. All of those things are guiding us very well. But the breakthrough AI translation in drug discovery and research, in my opinion, is yet to come.
Elcin, I wanted to ask you, some people look at AI and think, oh no, this is the end of civilization, and they're concerned about it. And others say this is an opportunity for tremendous innovation. Which side are you on there?
I'm somewhere in between, right? AI will continue, John. It's extremely important. It's fascinating. It's going to be transformational already. But we need to find a way to regulate it. We won't be able to totally regulate it because it's going to go in tremendous speed. But we do have to find a way to protect people's rights.
Where do you think the greatest value is?
In things like augmented reality, for instance, right? There's incredible applications there. It suddenly makes you access to different locations or allow you to communicate via technology in such a different way that opens up new possibilities for all of us. So one part of AI is the first translation is about efficiency. The other is the breakthrough in drug development.
And that's where diagnostics then comes in to do. It sounds a little sci-fi.
Because in all these trials, there's a lot of data out there. We talked about big data for 10 years in pharma, but what do we do with that big data? What did we translate out of all those, biomarkers? When I joined the R&D part of our industry, I realized our R&D people, mostly coming from medical, biology, and other related fields, have their own language, right? I know the IT world, it's have their own language. I think it's not easy for these two parts to talk, and to understand each other. We have to find ways, more user-friendly, to bring these groups together, possibly to really crack that and, unlock that breakthrough innovations on AI.
You've talked about your education, your experience, where you've lived. It's truly this global perspective, which is very unique among a lot of leaders. How do you factor into the developing world and how they may afford these treatments when they have limited resources? That's on the diagnostic side as well as the therapeutic side.
We're talking about all these fascinating innovations, but at the same time, if you look at where we are and why cardiovascular disease is still the leading cause of death, not only in emerging markets or developing world, but also in the US and Western Europe. And that is to do with the underlying issues when we look at obesity today is a big problem, right? And everywhere it is a real big problem that if we don't create also awareness, education, now new drugs are coming also into those areas, but we need to also create or continued education and awareness in underlying things. So if you consume too much sugar, it's going to affect your metabolism, but it's also going to make you more prone to cancer. So how do we really create a more holistic way to treat diseases? Because we in the Western world target a drug for a specific thing. We don't always look at holistically. Now those concepts are coming more and more. Second part of the equation is how do we get access to treatments?
What most excites you about your job?
What excites me is, to be able to have the resources, unlock innovation, to make a huge impact on patients' lives, and but also from a leadership perspective, you can be a role model in these jobs. You want to say to the world, look, if I did it, you can do it, right? Everybody can do it, because we talk always about the bias, but people like myself also shows that there's also not bias. There is a system out there that also is able to bring people like myself to, these positions where you can make a tremendous impact and also influence other people.
How are you and Menarini changing the future of healthcare?
First of all, Italy in general is known as a manufacturing hub in the pharma industry, but oncology is a very competitive area. So going into this area, we want to put Italy absolutely in that center of innovation, because in Italy, there's extremely good scientists. So far, we created a portfolio in the last 3 years of 3 transformational drugs, and all of them too in hematology area, all first in class. So this is a very exciting journey for us, and also growing our US organization. The next threat could be from the AMR, antimicrobial resistance area, John. This is a very neglected area. There is some now awareness on the whole topic. And, we are one of the few companies who actually have a portfolio. And some of these drugs are life-saving, but we don't yet have an ecosystem that is appropriately recognizing the importance of antimicrobial resistance. Every year, over 1 million people die from antimicrobial resistance. But it's not just about bringing new drugs to this area. It's also about what can we do in terms of access to these drugs.
I want to turn to leadership, your specific leadership. Here you are, a woman running an Italian-based pharmaceutical company. That's not the norm. How is your leadership style different?
This is a very big topic about women in leadership. Now, let's start with the not so bright side of it. Menarini is a top 50 global pharma company, and we have, along with me, only 3 other women who are CEOs of other top 50 global pharma companies. This is a very small number. I think at the board level, there has been progress, but at the CEO level, we have not seen that progress. So, I think partly that is to do with the education systems in different countries, right? Where women may not feel well empowered, or I don't know. I mean, when I studied computer engineering back years ago, it was a 50% class.
I'm fascinated by that you were a computer engineer. How did you move into the pharmaceutical realm? Did you think, oh, that's what I'm going to do?
Not
One
really.
day?
It was
tell us about that.
Actually, in high school, I graduated from biology. So I was always fascinated, but it took me a while to really find my passion and to move into pharmaceutical sector. Now, originally I worked for big technology US companies, actually. So originally I'm from Istanbul, but most people, actually most women, study engineering. So in computer engineering it was half-half, even in the 80s. And but also some others, chemical engineering, industrial, women are majority, actually. So therefore, I think that gives you a very good base where you don't feel different from the start. You feel like, okay, you man, woman, it just doesn't matter. I think this is a very important start. When I joined some companies later on in the UK, for instance, there weren't women engineers. You see, that I think starts all the way from the beginning. So I was in Netherlands, did my profession as a software engineer, and then to UK with a top US company. And then I transitioned into the CFO role first. So I went through finance, and then I moved into general management and regional management and leading the pharma P&L. So, but there I did a very important turn. And I believe those are things maybe where people, men and women, but maybe more women, don't take risk. When you have a large P&L in a big, another European company, 4 billion, 5 billion, it's a big power job, right? And you don't necessarily want to go at a smaller job. But our industry, in a very healthy way, in my opinion, became more innovation driven. I believe today, to be a successful pharma CEO, you need to know innovation in and out. You need to know how you get to that innovation. From a functional perspective, the engineering gave me a very good analytical background, and I put a very sound finance on top of it. But then commercial is essential, in my opinion, as well, to run in a CEO role. I think it's critical. But then for our industry, R&D is extremely critical. But in terms of also geographies, and I think it's increasingly important if you're a global CEO to have a cultural curiosity and to be able to understand what motivates and engages each culture.
Is the culture of leadership in Europe different than it is in the United States?
How is it different?
It is different, John, in the sense that US is a fast-paced culture. It's a culture that is very focused, very result-oriented. The what is very important in the US. In Europe, the how comes into picture. So, and when you look at Northern Europe and Southern Europe, the management styles, the leadership styles are different. Northern Europe, Nordic countries, Netherlands, Germany, these are more consensus cultures. You have to come around the table, regardless of your hierarchy, to really discuss matters and to get into an informed decision with participation of different people. In Southern Europe, there's hierarchy, but relationships are important. You first have to create the relationships, create trust, and then based on that, you can really work the other things, the what and the how. I think that's fundamental today in global leadership. And I don't think it's about being a woman or man, but but I think it's about truly having that appetite to learn and appetite to really have a very strong vision and ability to bring together, towards that vision, to really do, both in terms of delivering, of course, the financial goals that are very important, but create a purpose, particularly for us, very important, in order to really create a patient-centric company that is able to bring these transformation treatments to patients.
A big part of innovation is also educating colleagues about the latest developments. And sometimes that can be challenging. There's a lot of information out there. As you point out, we're in a renaissance. So there are studies coming out all the time. How does Menarini help educate clinicians about these innovations that we've been talking about?
I think that's a great question. And there is where like Medscape and other CME providers come into the picture. I think you guys are doing also a phenomenal job as part of this ecosystem to help us. We give grants, and through that there is independent education. Obviously, within our framework, we also have other chances of opportunity to educate physicians. I think, a conference like ASCO, for instance, has got so many different ways. It's because it's not only the conference itself, but what you do pre that conference, around that, and best of ASCO, or best of, all of these things in other areas. It goes into the different parts of US, it goes to different parts of the world. So I think I find our world incredibly well organized from the way we are working in that ecosystem to really, educate, through physicians and other, parts of collaborators. Do we really find always the best way to educate patients? Well, this is a very regulated industry. So within that framework and through the patient advocacy organizations, whenever we have them as our counterpart, we do our best. And there are areas, I think, that can improve in different parts of the world. But overall, I think it is a well, organized industry and ecosystem to really fulfill what we're doing.
If you were not running a pharmaceutical company, what would you be doing?
I'm passionate about science and innovation. I'm somebody more excited about what is possible, what is breakthrough, what can we do differently with all these resources that we have, where that can change the course of a treatment or something very important and impactful for the world. So those are the kind of things. I'm an Aquarius by my so we are really those people who want to be at the lead of the next very important thing. So I love what I'm doing. It gives me every opportunity. I consider myself very lucky and humbled to really be able to bring all these therapies. Possibly it would be that I would still want to do, or other breakthrough areas like AI and whatever to come as next.
Well, thank you, Elcin.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks for having me.